Welcome to a new episode of Cool Girls Create. It's your host, Taniesha Westbrook, and I am excited, y'all, because it's not often that I get to sit down with fellow dance creators. So I'm excited with the guest that I have today. Her name is Melaneice Gibbs, and she is a dance powerhouse. Okay, so we're going to get into some things, but welcome. Come on in. Welcome, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I want to start off by telling our audience a little bit about who you are. So, I know you as um the coach with the mostest of the sophisticated ladies at the Tennessee State University. Whoop whoop. And just a fellow boss woman out here in the Nashville scene, right? So I want to start off with this. Um, is it true that you started twirling batons at the age of 7?
It is, yes. A lot of people really before I got into my dance career, I was known as that girl that twirls because that's mostly what I've been doing majority of my life. But yeah, I started twirling at 7, have done lots of competitions, have titles and all that good stuff. And in the midst of that, started dancing and now it's all come together.
Yeah, so let's get into that. Because I'm always curious about what leads people to a particular career, especially when it comes to creativity, right? So tell our audience a little bit about your background. Like, I know that you have a degree in mass comm, um, and I'm sure there was a journey to get there. And so I want to know a little, and you're a Nashville native. So I want to know a little bit about how we got here, for you to be the coach at the coach at TSU with the sophisticated ladies. And if y'all don't know, sophisticated ladies are the well, you could say just majorettes is like the term for the dance, right?
Yeah.
But they're like on the front end, the representation of TSU when it comes to how we get down. Y'all know how we get down. So and then you have, another career as well. So just walk me through how we ended up at this point in your life.
Yeah. Went to high school here, went to Nashville School of the Arts for all my Nashville natives and all my Nashville NSA alums. Hey y'all. But I've always been a creative person, whether it was baton twirling or it was dance. When I was younger, I would write a lot of plays, especially in church. I would do the Christmas plays, Black History Month plays, all that good stuff. So it's kind of just always been in me to create. Never really had like a direct path or desire of what I wanted to do exactly. I think by the time I got to college, for me, I wanted to be a creative still, but just in a different capacity. I knew I didn't want to dance professionally. Like that was never my goal, which like really surprises people because of what I do now. But when I went to college, I went to Jackson State first, and I was like, when I go to college, wherever I go, I don't want to do anything with dance. I don't want to do anything with baton twirling, even though I got a scholarship for baton twirling. But I wanted to do PR. I wanted to be in the music industry a little bit. I thought I wanted to do a little A&R, but PR was really like my thing. Or at least I thought it was because of this show that was on MTV. Like I thought that's what I was gonna do.
What was the show? What was the
I
show?
can't the name of the show, but it was kind of like this reality show that followed these girls or this company doing like different events, red carpets, all these different things in the music industry or entertainment industry in general. And I was like that's what I want to do. So yeah, dance was never a part of the picture at all. But you know, God has a sense of humor. And so just even through college, I've always been a part of a dance team. I was in the band. even afterwards, just coaching different teams. I've coached every level from elementary school, middle school, high school, and of course now college. Um, but and just to one correction, so because a lot of people don't know this, but I actually don't have a degree. So I've been to two schools. I started out at Jackson State, did my first 2 years there, and then transferred. I take that back. Three schools. UTC.
Mm-hmm.
Um, hated it. I couldn't do it. So then I transferred again to MTSU, and things kind of started taking off once I got to MTSU from a dance perspective. Again, remember, I didn't want anything to do with dance. But all these different opportunities to either coach or choreograph started coming up, and it kind of just took over to the point where I had to start making a decision, or I felt like I needed to make a decision of whether to continue on my path of school, which the focus with school was still the same. Still wanted to do PR, and just didn't finish. So it's interesting when I do tell people that, because people, I think sometimes we get caught in this thought process that like we have to pick one path over the other. And sometimes when you just kind of walk in your purpose and just allow God to use you, He makes a way for you that sometimes a degree can't get you. And I'm not saying don't get your degree, but I think it's just
Well,
to tell that story, because everybody doesn't necessarily take that path, or in my case finish that path.
yeah, it's interesting that you say that. So when I was doing research about you for this conversation, that was one of the things that stuck out to me was your transition with schools. And it stuck out to me because I graduated high school in 2008, and I actually did get my degree, but it took me 7.5, almost 8 years to get
Mhm.
that degree.
Oh,
And I had to leave school. I lost my scholarship and got kicked out of school. So I really can relate to the experience of trying to figure it out
yeah.
when it comes to just being like a young adult, because um I didn't have examples as far as like how are you supposed to maneuver going to college or figuring out a career, especially as a creative. So I think that's admirable for you to share your experience when it comes to that.
Yeah, I feel like for creatives it's hard because our brain goes in 50 billion different directions. And I feel like a lot of times, even before you get to college and in high school, you're taught that like there's this structure and there's this direct path to the things that you want to do. And for creatives, it's not so direct.
It is not. It is not. And it's interesting because now being a creator, entrepreneur, those are like buzzwords. Like it's like a thing now. But 10, 12 years ago, when I first started as a creative entrepreneur, people would be like, "What are you talking about? What does that mean? And how do you make money?" Like
Yeah.
what? So how did you experience that at all? Especially when it came to um doing something that I don't think is traditional when it comes to careers as far as dance, like choreography and putting together shows and performances. I don't see that type of excitement for that as a career in our community as much, especially something that we can scale.
Yeah, it I went through it a lot, especially with family. And I can just hear my grandmother now, love my grandmother to death. But it's a different mindset. Everybody's like, you gotta go to school, you gotta get a job, you need to, so you can have your 401k and retire and all this stuff. So it was very hard for a lot of people, a lot of family to comprehend that dance could be a career. Like, how do okay, you're making a little money right here, but like, where's the longevity? How is this gonna, set you up, for the rest of your life? Like, what is the plan? And honestly, there really wasn't a plan, but it was just like this. I knew this was the path, especially when it came to youth, because that's pretty much majority of what I've done in my past is working with kids or young adults. And so that just trying to get people to understand, like, yes, I can make a career out of this. They see it now, but in the beginning, there was a lot of questions and a lot of moments where I was just kind of like, okay, are they right? Like, am I doing the right thing?
Ooh, we talk about it.
So yeah, it can get to you because I mean, you think you're doing the right thing, you feel good and passionate about what you're doing, but then you have the people that you know love and support you are like, no, that ain't it.
Especially when you're on the struggle bus. Let's be real about it, because there is a time frame, whether you are in a creative career or not, starting a business, whatever. Um, well, not franchising, freelancing. There is a time where you're on the struggle bus and you're trying to, we like to say over here, build the plane while you're flying it. So
Mm.
people are looking at you like, girl, if you don't just go over here and get a job or go do this, why are you wasting your time with this passion project or whatever? So I've had to deal with that too. So my question for you is, what do you think the biggest mistake is that you made when it came to actually pursuing dance as a career and transitioning from the traditional path of finishing at what school were you at? At
Issue.
mhm.
I would say probably I try not to say mistakes, but like if I had to choose one, I would probably say my biggest mistake in the process was probably like not continuing to study dance, like physically studying dance. I think just like anything, any other industry, like things change and they grow. And I think just that main foundation of dance that I had, like I took so many years kind of off physically. And I would probably say like that's probably like my biggest mistake because I felt like I was playing catch up. So then it's, you know, trying to study what's going on. It's trying to get back into the routine of dancing. It's trying to understand how to do certain things or teach certain things because I really hadn't been doing it. But I will say on the flip side of that, getting out of that world for a moment helps me one appreciate it a little bit more, but then the other things that I learned in the process, just because of what my major was and what my minor was, because my minor was business entrepreneurship. So it really all kind of played out the way it needed to, but I definitely think that being out the game for a minute, it cost me a little bit.
You know what? This is like the perfect segue because it's two things that stuck out to me because we're going to talk about entrepreneurship just a little bit. But the first thing that I want to touch on is I'm I'm glad that you said that because you wouldn't connect dance and staying on top of what's happening in your industry, whether that and staying physically fit, taking the classes, doing the things, you wouldn't necessarily connect that to any other industry. But I'm happy you said that because I believe that personal and professional development is something that is so important. And I'm gonna just be real. I think a lot of times people that look like us, they don't invest in those things. They don't think that it's important. They don't see the value. I was just having a conversation one day with someone who was saying that they don't like self-help books or reading, or they don't really stay up on those things that are gonna help you continue in your path. And I'm happy that you mentioned that because we need to talk about it.
Yeah, and that's great. That's great because I mean, here's the thing: those self help books, or even whether you're in a college classroom, it's still all the same at the end of the day. It's just who's telling it. You know, I think that being in the classroom, like, and being in a different industry, it really wasn't as much as it is different, it really wasn't different. Everything that I learned then from like a marketing perspective, whether it's like the graphics or, just understanding or having a PR mindset, or I know one of my favorite classes was like legal stuff, like contracts. Like all of those things now play a part in everything that I do now. So it kind of connects the dots. But I'm a firm believer, and I know I feel like it's hard right now because everybody's all over like Instagram and TikTok giving their expertise on things, right? Because
Yeah,
everybody's expert. Um,
everybody's the guru.
yeah, everybody. Like you just need a camera and a couple notes, and you know what you're talking about, right? Um, it's it's hard right now because of just where we are, socially. But to be honest, like it's things like that, like true experts that kind of help us either one like shift our mindset or figure out like how we can be better in the different things and areas of, of our life. So that's interesting that like they don't like self-help.
Well, this I hear this quite often. And if you think about it from a Black community perspective, self-help books used to be a joke when I was coming up in the 90s. It would be like, oh, you reading the, but if I like, for instance, I'm like, I got a couple of books behind me. So like, books about business, books about marketing, books about being more productive. All of those things to me are personal and professional development, but we look at them, or some people look at them as like self-help. And I'm like, well, you supposed to help yourself. But
Yeah.
I want to touch on the other point that was important about what you said, which ties back to entrepreneurship, and that is the general idea of having strong business acumen. So like what you were saying about all of the things that you learned, whether that was in the classroom or you took it from your professional career or or taking a break from dance, you had to build up basically a muscle of business acumen. And I don't believe that people realize the importance of that, especially creators. Because behind the scenes, I've spent over the last however many years, 10 years, coaching creators on how to price their products or services, how to monetize their art, how to operate in a way where they're not just pimping themselves out for their services and getting paid, the bare minimum or nothing at all. You know the creator struggle. Um, and so I believe that the issue and the biggest roadblock that people run into as creators when it comes to monetizing the art is we don't have business acumen. There's an art to doing business for yourself, or you making yourself the business. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I do. I see that a lot. Just with creatives, but then also even in just like my day job, working in diversity and helping businesses get like either government contracts or certifications. We all understand what it is that we do. We understand what we can bring to the table, and but we don't always know how to monetize that, and we don't always know how to structure it in a way that it can be profitable for us. Like we understand everything, every, twist and turn of what it is that we do and what we can provide. And I think sometimes, especially right now with a lot of things that are going on, just from like a legislation standpoint, with the arts and diversity, and that's a whole nother topic in itself. But I I do think that even like what you do in helping creatives understand that is so needed because we're struggling. And I say we because even sometimes for myself, like I struggle with
Same. I want to
it.
let y'all know that yes, it's an uphill battle.
It is, and I don't know, like it's really just I think one again kind of we have to be able to step out of that creative mindset and have that entrepreneurial spirit about what it is that, that we do, and understand that we are creatives, we're providing whatever it is that we provide, but it's still a business in itself.
Yeah, and one of the biggest challenges that I've had, so I've been full time as a creative entrepreneur for 6 years. So um sometimes it's difficult to balance the creativity with the business, meaning creativity comes from within for me. It's a natural gift that I have to cultivate. Um and it was easier to do when I wasn't thinking about I'm having to provide a lifestyle from this creativity.
Mhm.
So now that I'm like a business owner, it's like this be drained,
It's a
okay? The
thing.
I'm like, I know the last thing you be want to do is a 5, 6, 7, 8. Talking about let me get this, when you're trying to operate on a higher level. What's your experience with balancing that?
It's a struggle. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like sometimes I really feel like I'm going crazy. I don't know. Like my brain is just it be in 50 different places
Like
at once.
50 tabs open at once?
Yes. And I'll give you an example. Even just today, I'm gonna use yesterday for example. So I'm at work, I'm in the office, I am trying to get, work done, working on contracts and different things like that. But I am so like just random and sporadic. I will be working on contracts for like 10 minutes. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about, okay, tomorrow I know I have this meeting for a dance conference, and I have to meet with this person about this partnership for the sophisticated ladies. And then I'm looking like, okay, what did I just do on this contract? So I'm like, nope, let me focus back, get the contract done. But then before I can get it done, I'm getting a text message. It's probably from the band director. So now I'm like, okay, what's going on with that? And then it's just so many different things. And I really find myself a lot of times like talking to myself and be like, Melaneice, like you gotta stop, pause, focus on this one thing, get this done. Like it's a real hard balance between trying to create, trying to, focus on the entrepreneur aspect of it, and then, for me, still having a full-time job. And then you add personal life into that also. And that's a whole nother balancing act in itself that is just foolish.
Ooh, I was about to say what personal life. But you know what? I really truly believe in building a life that I'm excited to wake up to. So this year, my goal is to really focus on making sure that I'm enjoying the moments. But I definitely understand what you mean about like having all the tabs open and then dealing with distractions, trying to figure out what to prioritize. Um, to be candid, for me, I think I'm finally getting into the groove of being more effective. Um, and it's because I just decided to embrace like using productivity apps, and learning more about, okay, tell me if you struggle with this. As a creator, I got a million ideas, right? And back
Mhm.
in the day, I had this mentor who said, you got too many plates in the air. You're juggling too many plates. And I was offended because I was like, I could do this. I could do all of this, right? But going back to what you said about like focusing on one thing, that requires discipline. And it
Mhm.
wasn't until literally this last like 12 months in my life where I practiced discipline on what am I going to spend my attention on, and honestly standing up for myself and my own agenda versus everybody else's agendas and deadlines and what they want. But what do
Mhm.
you think? Oh, you feeling what I'm you picking up what I'm putting down?
I am. I am, and that was the question I was going to ask you too, because I found myself in that same, like, still in that same just gray area of trying to figure that out. And I came to a point where I'm like, I know I need to start saying no to certain things. And I need to start making time, for certain things. And like you said, have that discipline to be like, I'm focusing on this thing and then I'll do this later. Like just having that discipline and that structure. Um, but then there's like this little, voice in the back that's like, you have all these things that need to get done and all these
Mhm,
things you want to accomplish and time is not on your side. It's all of that.
mhm.
But I was gonna ask you, like, just how have you been balancing that? How have you been, I guess, saying no, or focusing on your own personal agenda and not the outside.
Everybody else's. You know what? I appreciate you for asking me that. Do I have this book on here? I don't have it on me. So the first thing is I read a book called Seven Habits of Highly Effective People probably almost a year ago. And in that book, they talk about Eisenhower's matrix, right, of productivity. So, and tell me if you heard of this before, but it's basically where you take all of the things that you have to do and you make a little chart, right? And it's four areas where it's like the things that are the most urgent and need to happen now, the things that are not as urgent, well, the things that are urgent, but they can happen later, the things that are not important, not urgent, right? That's on this side. And then over here, it's not important, but they still need to happen. They have a time thing. So the first thing that I do, that I started doing before I got to this point is I would take all my tasks and I would divide them up into this like section. And I have whiteboards. I would get up and show you, girl, but I got like whiteboards and I would literally do this. And I run a business with my husband, so layer that on top of. So we would have to do this quite often until we got to the point where, okay, now we know what should be the priority. Um, and so what I do now is I use a tool called Basecamp. It's a productivity tool.
You said.
People, I've used so many different things, y'all. And I left base camp and then I came back. And I'm telling you, it has been life changing this time around. Because you have to make a decision that you are in charge of your time. So
Mhm.
just to wrap this on up, um, one thing is I ask myself now every day, what are the top three things that I can do that are going to move the needle forward the most? I'm going to do those first. And then everything else is after. The second thing is I planned out my whole year this year. Every event, everything that I want to do is now on my calendar. And now when people come along, because they already knocking. I know you got the emails, the texts, the phone calls, the hey, can you do this? Do you want to collaborate with this? Can the girls go there? Now I can field them and say, okay, I'm looking at my year. I only can take one thing in January, one thing in March, you know? So I'm using all of these tools to prioritize myself and I'm focused on what are the big things that I want to accomplish this year. So I'm gonna recommend reading Seven Habits or at least taking Chat GPT and asking it for a summary of the key principles in the book.
Mhm.
And then there's a book called 12. Have you heard of 12-week year?
Mm-mm.
So basically it's the concept of taking your yearly goals, things that you want to accomplish in the year, but shrinking it down to just doing it in 12 weeks at a time. So you
Wow.
give yourself a more concise timeline to get stuff done. Um, yeah,
Okay.
because we like to draw things out, you know.
Do.
Yeah, so but those are a couple of things. Me and you, we could talk offline and girl, I'm a technology girl and productivity process girl. So we could get it together.
I'm definitely gonna try to read those books, but yes, we're gonna have to talk some more because oh,
Yes, yes. So I want to ask you this because now, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I was doing research, but did you used to be a bank teller?
I
Me too,
did,
girl.
I
I
did,
want to
and
talk. I want to talk
that
about the bank teller life.
man, I learned a lot in that small amount. I think I was only a bank teller for like maybe 4, 5 months, maybe 6 months.
Not
But
even
and I
two
won't say
years.
what bank, but I learned a lot, and I learned one. This is not for me. That's the first thing I learned. That was number one. Um, but secondly, it taught me to look at money completely different. I will say that because of the area, because the bank I was at, it was in Franklin, and the type
Mhm.
of people that would come in and bank with us and just what they had and what was accessible to them opened my eyes completely. And I was like, oh,
Wow. And okay, so two things. So I have a degree in accounting from TSU. My first internship was at the bank that you were a teller at, right?
uh-huh,
Um, because I worked in commercial banking. But before I got to that part in my career, I started out as an intern and then I went over to their rival bank, think the biggest big bank, and became a teller because I was still in college. But girl, I was on Dickerson Road. Okay. If y'all don't know what Dickerson Road is, let's just
oh,
say it is a um urban area in Nashville. Okay. And
mhm,
so it's interesting that you're saying now, and if you don't know where Franklin is in the Nashville, Tennessee area, this is a suburb of Nashville. Let's put it like
yeah,
that. So she's saying that she saw some things when it came to accessibility and resources over in that area. And I'm telling y'all, baby, I was exposed to some things as well over in the other area. So isn't that contrast so interesting?
is it's a completely different dynamic, completely different. And it's so funny too because I would leave that area, I would leave Franklin to then go coach at Maplewood.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just real interesting those two different dynamics because it's not far from where you said you were working at. Is that it's a completely different demographic. The resources are completely different.
The
Um,
treatment
the
to the
treat
customers.
is completely different. So wow, yeah.
Okay, so I got one more question about this. So it's interesting because the area that I was in, and y'all, this is as y'all get to know me, I'm a creator, but I'm also a data girl. I'm an information girl. And I'm paying attention to what's happening in the world. And most people that came over into that branch in that area, um, they didn't really they came to cash checks. They didn't really have like bank
And
accounts.
mm-hmm.
They weren't there in the office to, buy homes or, get car loans or a small business loans. No, baby, none of that. So I'm curious to know what types of reasons were customers coming into the bank in that area?
They were coming into, we had a lot of business owners who were coming into deposit into their business accounts. We also had a lot of people who were again just depositing checks. It was very rare that I would just cash a check. Like very rare. And if I did, they didn't want the whole check. They weren't cashing the whole check. They were still depositing money into accounts. They were open because you know how it pops up on the screen, the different things you can offer somebody
Mm-hmm.
based on their account. And so like a lot of times it was easy to sell them on those different banking products or accounts because they understood the benefits of them. And I will never forget around Christmas time, this older lady, she came in with her granddaughter. And this is when I like really realized, I knew it was different, but this is when I really realized it. And they came in to get a cashier's check for the granddaughter so that she could buy a horse.
Y'all can't see my face. I was in shock.
So she could buy a horse.
Yes.
So I was like,
Yes, because why not?
I mean, because we buying horses every day, like, and I just, and it was in that moment, I'm like, that's a different life.
Hmm. But
That's a different
isn't that, like you said, that exposure, like those are moments that you won't forget. And I think if there's anything that I can say that has impacted me the most in my life, it's those small moments of being exposed to there's more out there. I can have more, why can't I?
but that is the question I always ask myself in everything. Why can't I?
Right, because who said it? Who said that? Who told you that? Okay, so I want to spend the last part of our conversation talking a little bit more about your career in two aspects. So you have your corporate career, and I'm doing air quotes, your corporate career. And then you have your dance career, right? So talk about what it has been like to balance both of those things. Like, what are some of the skills that you've had to cultivate in the corporate space, and how do they connect to you as a creator in the dance space?
Yeah, so with my corporate job, I work in purchasing and diversity, and more so purchasing in a procurement standpoint. So procuring different services for my company, but within that, there's a diversity aspect, which I absolutely love because it gives me the opportunity to help small and minority businesses either one, do business with us, or if they're not able to do business with us, we host, just as part of our commitment to diversity, we host events to help small and minority businesses either get like government contracts.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. So, what is
Yep.
a because this is the thing. Now we can have a whole conversation about government contracts because I'm newly exposed to the idea of government contracts, and it's like so vast and only a small percentage of us know anything about it. But what are you seeing I guess as far as like roadblocks when it comes to working with small businesses and exposing them to this process?
I'll say the first thing is very much like you said, it's a small bubble, right? And even in that, when I'm talking to a lot of small and minority businesses, especially minority businesses, a lot of people don't know that the government or even private entities have set asides for small and minority businesses. Um, and I know it's it's kind of in a weird area right now just because of the Supreme Court's decision with affirmative action and everything. But these companies still have money that they're like, okay, we have these services that we need or these projects that we're working on, but we want to make sure we spend a certain amount of money with small and minority businesses. And so when they go into these projects, or they have these services, that money is reserved. They do a study, and we do the same thing. We'll look at, I don't know, I'm gonna make up a bit. We'll look at dog walking services. That's not really one, but we'll look at dog walking services and be like, okay, there are so many small and minority businesses within this industry that could potentially work with us. So we're gonna set aside, you know, $100,000. That's a low number. We're
Hmm.
gonna set aside $100,000 to make sure that we work with small and minority businesses who can service dog walking services. The thing with that though is once you tell people that, and very much like a creative, our thought process or their thought process is, oh, okay, that's the service you need. I can do that. And that's great that you can do it, but there's so much more that we look at when it comes to that. And I think the main thing that I see with a lot of smaller minority businesses is one, they don't always have all their dots lined up from a business structure perspective. So it's making sure you have all those things. But then also it's getting the certification. So even though you may be a minority business, and I can look at you and tell that you're a Black woman, but me being able to see that you're a Black woman is not gonna, that's not gonna, what's the word I'm looking for? That's not going to help me when I'm reporting. Like, I have to have documentation to show. And that's where the certifications come in. The roadblock with a lot of smaller minority businesses is that they don't want to put in the work to get the certification. And the work is not hard, it's just tedious. And it's literally
Mm.
all the things that you should already have as a business. You just have to provide the documentation, to the government. And the it's not user friendly, because it's all online. And so then if you have a problem, it's not easy to get in contact with somebody. And so a lot of times what they do is they throw their
They
hands up
gave
and
up.
I'm not going to worry about it. Well, now you're missing out on all this money that is available. But I think the other roadblock too is the ones who stick with it and they do get their certification. They're like, okay, I got my certification. But then like nothing happens. And it's like, well, you still have to do the work. You still have to, network with these companies. You still have to propose business proposals to these companies. Like when you're bidding for something, and then that right there is a whole nother process. So understanding, bid process procedures and what you should submit and what these companies are looking for. Those are just a few of the roadblocks, but that's why we have different events. We partner with like the airport, we partners with the Nashville Business Incubation Center and just different different
Oh,
organizations.
I love NBIC. Angela Crane Jones, that's my mentor. Shout out to Angela Crane
Yes.
Jones.
Yes, she is amazing. I love her. And then even on the federal level with Tennessee Apex, we partner with a bunch of different organizations, but we also partner with companies. Like right now, construction is a big thing in Nashville. Everybody wants a piece of the pie of the Titan Stadium, And from our perspective, we're like, there's all these other projects, and y'all are focused on one project. So a lot of times, small minority businesses get tunnel vision on the big shiny project, and we don't always look at all the other things that are just as profitable as well.
Ooh, but
This is a lot. We can talk about
no, no,
that for
no. So you're gonna have to come back. I don't invite everybody back. I don't invite anybody back. But I feel like we need to have a part two just to talk about um small businesses and minority owned businesses in general. And I feel like this conversation was driven by creator talk. But when it comes to what you're discussing, that applies, I don't think, not only to government contracts, but in general, when it comes to people that look like us,
Mhm.
we are not exposed to the vast opportunities for business. So many ways to generate revenue and to make money and to grow and to scale. But I am adding this to my charge that I want to really focus on exposure, just letting people know what's out there. So let's close out this conversation with some advice from you. Okay. So I want you to think about the top three things that have helped you really catapult yourself in your career. Like what have been the things that have been the most impactful as far as decisions you've made or mindset shifts, skill sets? Um, what really has helped you make a mark?
A couple things. So the first thing I would say is my network and being able to create the network that I want, meaning being intentional about the people that I talk to and interact with, the people that I'm building connections with. Because I think a lot of times, as creatives and as entrepreneurs, we're so quick to want to meet and network with the people that are all the way at the top up here. And we don't want to network and talk with the people that are either one on the same level as us, or even sometimes I don't want to say below us, but like maybe
Aspiring,
they're
aspiring, new, up and coming.
they're just getting started. And like I am so, if you're about your business and I can see that and you're making the efforts. So there are, I've run into people too who they want to do something but they don't want to do the heavy lifting, and they just want to be associated with what's going on. And so it's having that discernment of being, of who to work with, and just continuing to build my network and maintaining those connections. Because that's a thing too, is we'll meet people, but we don't maintain or build the relationship or the connection. And then when we need something, then we want to reach out to them. But it's like you have to like you
Woo!
got to do that.
You see, you speak in discernment because this is a common theme in a lot of my conversations is people talk about networking, they don't talk about relationships. And
Yeah,
what Angela likes to say is that relationships is currency. And so I think the issue is that most people go into meeting new people or networking with the what's in it for me attitude.
most
What am
definitely.
I right? What am I going to get out of this? It's all about me and my agenda. And what I found that has worked for me is being more of a servant leader.
Mhm.
So I'm going into rooms thinking, how can I be a resource here? Who can I connect? What person can I meet that I can brighten their day today or, help them out with something? And I think if people took more of that approach,
Yeah.
of serving, then we would get so much further as far as like working together and collaborations and not getting burned,
Oh yeah.
by people
Mo-
who just want to show up with their makeup on and they dress and take the picture.
yes. All of that. And it's so crazy because I tell people all the time, I used to question, and I'll finish answering your question, but I used to question why I met certain people like some years back, because they had absolutely nothing to do as far as like what they were doing. They didn't really have anything, like what they were doing and what I was doing did not connect. But I continued to maintain those relationships and build, that connection with them. Well, fast forward now I understand why, because I needed some alumni that I didn't know I was going to need because I didn't go to TSU, and so these are prominent people who have influence. I didn't know that I was going to, create this amazing relationship. I call her my big sister. Her name is Harriet Wallace. I didn't know that I was going to have this great, journalist, PR, like she's literally everything person that I can, bounce my ideas off of when I'm trying to figure out how to best market something for the sophisticated ladies or for myself. So all these different people that I met years ago are now very heavily just connected to what I'm doing now. But back to your question though. So networking is one.
Hmm.
And then the other is believing in myself and believing in myself enough to take the risk. Um because a lot of times like we know we can do something, but you know how you have those second thoughts of like, is this gonna work? Is like just those doubtful questions. But I always, whenever I'm doing stuff for the sophisticated ladies, and the band director will vouch for this. Like a lot of times, I'm like, I might get in like a little bit of trouble, but I'm willing to take the risk because I know if it comes out well, it's going to be amazing. And so just believing in myself enough to take the risk on whatever it is that I'm doing, whether it's for the team or for my own, for myself, for my business, or, even at work. Those are like the main two things. And I will say, and it's like a shameless plug. But I believed in myself enough to take the risk to kind of step out on faith, even with the sophisticated ladies, to start advocating for them to have scholarships. Because a lot of people don't know that HBCU dancers do not receive scholarships.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they're a part of the band. Most HBCU dance lines are a part of the band. There are a couple that they're kind of their separate thing, but they're still with the band. But even in those, like, most do not receive scholarships. And so you have these girls who are dedicating their time, their image, their likeness, their talent to be ambassadors for the university. Essentially, is what they're doing. And they're at practice every day. Their pressure is a little different than instrumentalists because they literally are the face. People recognize them, and they don't get money for that. And so I was finally able to secure scholarships for them. So this past season, fall 2023, was the first time that I was able to
Woo!
scholarships. Yes.
Say it
And so
again. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I want you to show up on the screen when this happened. Okay, say it again.
so I was able to award scholarships for the first time this past fall semester. So fall 2023, everybody on the dance line received scholarships. And so I awarded over $80,000 in scholarships to the team, which is a major, major win. So I'm super excited about that. I created a mini documentary about it that has just been completed. I got the final edited version like 2 days ago. So I'm super
Yay!
excited about that, but I'm really hoping that, one, we just continue to push this mindset that they deserve scholarships. Continue to increase the budget because I only had 10 dancers this year. So typically we have 15 to 17. Well, 80 to $100,000, it's a lot of money and it's an amazing start, but
Not
it's
when
not.
you divide.
Okay, because the math ain't mathing on that. So we need the math to math. And I think that's where my vision for this mini documentary that I funded, I did. This was not a TSU project or Aristocratic Bands project. This was literally Melaneice believing in the initiative and the purpose of this, because I do think that if I push the envelope for TSU to do this and we get it, then it'll start to trickle down to other HBCUs, and other dance lines will have scholarships too. Because these girls work way too hard. Us coaches work way too hard for them to not have what they deserve. So yeah, I just had to throw that in there real quick.
I'm glad you threw that in there. I'm gonna look, I'm celebrating with you, and kudos to you for documenting the process. Now, y'all know that I am a content girl. I'm more so of a personal branding, marketing, put yourself out there, girl. But the fact that you took the initiative to document the process not only will help you in the long run be able to tell the story so that you can get more support. Hopefully it'll encourage other people, right, to take on some passion projects and look out into the world outside of themselves
Yes.
and actually become servant leaders. So, congratulations and kudos to you for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna close this thing on out with the final word. I'm glad you did share a little bit about your experience with sophisticated ladies. I would like for you to close us out and just share um what is the biggest lesson that you've learned as a coach when it comes to your role with sophisticated ladies.
Ooh, oh, there's so much. I would say the biggest thing that I have learned as a coach, especially with the sophisticated ladies, is that everyone is not the same and everybody needs to be taught and loved and pushed in different ways. Um, and I think part of that is being able to see who they are just individually. We have our goals as coaches that we want our team to do and excel. But that can't happen if we're not using everybody's personal strengths. And so I think that's been one of the hardest things for me to learn and do, because just like a creative, like we know what we want, we know what the end goal is, we know what we want to see, but it's helping them get to that. They're at the end of the day, they're trusting me, to push the vision, or I'm trusting them, but they're trusting me to push this vision forward, and I can't do that without them. And so I think the biggest hurdle and the biggest lesson has been just understanding people and understanding and accepting them for who they are. Um, and not, people say this all the time, like meet people where they're at. And I'm not gonna do that. Like I don't want to meet you where you're at because I don't want you to stay there. I'm gonna meet you where I, as a coach and as a leader, I feel like you have the ability to achieve, which is slightly above where you're at. And then if we can excel beyond that, amazing. So that has been the hardest thing, is trying to figure out and how to accept and understand that they're all different, and you have to push them and gravitate towards a goal in a different way with each one.
You know, that's a bar. That's a sermon. It kind of sounds like parenting. I don't have any kids. Well, I have a dog, but I don't have any kids. But it
It
sounds like what parents say.
it is,
Um,
and I don't have no kids. They are my kids. So it's
yes.
yes.
So the only thing that I am going to add to that is that I agree with you, Melaneice. I think if more of us focused on cultivating our own personal strengths and celebrating other people's personal strengths, we would get a lot further. And I'm gonna close out by saying this is the time for you, if you're listening to this, to take the risk. Okay. Don't let your fear of letting other people see you fail forward stop you from taking the risk to live the life that you deserve to live. Whether that be starting a new career, starting a new project, going for something that you didn't think that you could possibly do, this is the time for you. So go ahead and take the risk. All right. I want to thank you, Melaneice, for joining me today on the Cool Girls Create podcast. And if you're listening, I'll see you on the other side for a new episode. Peace. T and Melaneice signing out.